Lochoya sampo pagyo trashi pa tuche tempe trinle yarngoda pelge drolor zampe zeparche palden lame shabla solvade Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Sane Karm Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Sane Karm Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Sane Kar Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Sane Kar Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Sane Kar Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Sane Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Sane Kar Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Sane Kar Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Pakyuke Kudandagi Alo Pakyuke Sungdandagi Pakyuke Tugdandagi Tenyerme Chiktu Chingi Alo Makyuke Kudandagi Alo Makyuke Sungdandagi Makyuke Tugdandagi Tenyerme Chiktu Chingi Alo Om Muni Mahamuni Shakya Munye Swaha Om Muni Mahamuni Shakya Munye Swaha Om Muni Mahamuni Shakya Munye Swaha Sashipe ki chushi me to tramare rabaling shi ni de gempadi sange shintu mikte che par shoye dhammam guru ratna mandrala kam niryatayami sangye chedan tsoge chonam la chancho pardo dagi chushe gibe sonam ge drola pinchira sangye drupara sho sangye chedan tsoge chonam la chancho pardo dani kyapso che dagi jinso gibe sonam ki drola pinchira sangye drupara sho sangye chedan tsoge chonam la chancho pardo dani kyapso che dagi jinso gibe sonam ki drola pinchira sangye druparasho.
In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge in enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Good evening. One of the peculiarities that we find in many traditions, in Tibetan Buddhism, is the use of speech as something which helps us to remember and which gives us direction. We use this metaphor, which said the old meaning needs the stick in order to be, the old man of meaning needs a stick in order to walk, the stick of meaning. How means how often do we make a mistake? How often do we get distracted? And sometimes, and a distraction can last days and days and weeks. We understand something, we've given the mind a direction, I want to attain this realization. And then something distracts us and we forget. We're distracted by so many things, and then maybe we go back to that point months afterwards, and sometimes even years. Can that happen or not? Therefore, what happens is that just because we are distracted, just a half a word to make us to go in a totally different direction. And because of this, we need other words to bring us back on the right direction. So words are like a hook that takes our mind and brings us back into the direction that we choose. It's not something that's used only by Buddhist tradition or other spiritual traditions. Comes to mind, I've seen in some countries, for example, China and other countries, when you come into the, when you get to work in the morning, all the workers, before they start working, they sing the company hymn. They're all there in their hand on their hearts, standing up, and there's often a little bit of physical exercise, 15 minutes, 20 minutes to do physical exercises, and then after that, then there's the hymn, and then there's the swearing in. Every time is repeated, same thing. Words, what do? They direct the mind. If I want somebody to see something or think something, even if he does it unconsciously, I make that person repeat those words, the message. Gradually it will sink in. Words have an enormous power to redirect our mind. The ones that we say and the words that we hear, those that we say have a greater effect than those that we hear on our mind. Therefore, the things that we say, we should be very careful of what we say. Even somebody says something as a kind of a joke, it still has a weight, it has a force to direct the mind. It's said that when somebody lies often, at a certain point, they don't know, they're no longer able to distinguish between their own truth and their own lies. So even the person who lies often can be in doubt about the truth. It's said that in Nazi times that a lie that's constantly repeated becomes the truth. Not in all the effects, but how it's perceived. Let's say I tell a lie. That person, the other one believes it. So many people believe it. And at a certain point, I also have a doubt if it's true or not. In Tashilhunpa, there's a famous story. It's said that they were putting the gold roof on, and traditionally when they put the golden roofs on in the monasteries, nobody should look at it because it brings bad luck. It could. So it's a tradition that nobody should see that being done. So, in Shigatsu, in Tashilhunpa, but it's the center of everything in that zone. They're the center of everything in those zones. Now they're actually in the center of the town. It's the event of the year to see the roof being erected. And the person in charge of the construction had to put the roof on. I don't know if they had cranes or whatever, as they do today. And he had to do it. And he had to do it in a way where there weren't too many people present. And what did he do? The day in the morning, very early in the morning, in which they had to do this job, they started spreading a rumor that behind the mountain there was a dragon. And he started, so there was a dragon, how it was, what it looked like. And he told somebody who believed in him, and then this person told many other people, much better than social media, and in no time the whole town knew about the dragon behind the mountain, and everybody went to see the dragon, so that he was free to put up the golden roof without all those people present. At the end of the day, all these people, after the end of the day, instead of commenting on the roof, started commenting on the dragon. And so So a short time after at a certain point, he actually, he also had a doubt that maybe this was true, that there was a dragon. So he actually went to see if it was that. And these stories are told, but to demonstrate that a lie, when many people start to believe in it, oneself begins to have doubts. Because one of the parameters we use if something is true or not is how many people believe in it. If everybody says it's true, then we believe it's true. And in Italy we say, well, who said that? Nah, but writing is the simplest thing there is. But the fact that so many people say that something is true doesn't mean that it is true. This is something to think about for us, because we have this tendency, and it's not just from today, but in Tibet, many centuries ago, it was like that. When many people believe in something, and even if it was invented by the person telling the fact or the lie, everybody started to believe it. So here we see the power of the word, of speech. We should be careful, therefore, to be conscious of how we want to use our speech. And one of the things which is important is to use speech and avoiding terminology that have violent undertones. If one doesn't want to use that word, one shouldn't use the word to generate violence or the so-called swear words. There are some words which do have a violent root, but they're used in a constant which is perfectly normal. So some words are used out of context, including these swear words. So it's not because the word is used out of its real context that it doesn't convey that meaning on a subtle level. We should always remember that the speech directs the mind. Religious people have always known this, and people who do marketing, politicians, and entrepreneurs. Otherwise, why would they make you do the company hymn every morning? Advertising. You hear it once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. Slowly, it goes into your head. But when we ourselves utter those words, it has even a greater effect. Therefore, it's very important to be aware of the way in which we use our speech. One of the things that's been very important for me in the studies that I've done it's a bit of a kind of professional defamation, if you like, that I give a great deal of weight and importance to the word. So each word, you said this, so each word has a weight. In Tibet, often monks who study dialectics were often unwelcome in the village because they had a tendency to debate with the villagers every time they said something, and the villagers got fed up with this. There's this kind of, when I came to Italy, It was really hard for me at the beginning when I came to it. And then slowly I came to learn that often that what one said was not necessarily what they wanted to say. Now I have more experience. It took a long time to realize this. He's saying this to me, but what he means is something totally different. And there are so many things. There's somebody who hurts you to ask for help. I'd never seen that before. Instead of saying, I need your help, can you give me a hand? I've got a problem. Instead of that, you're not giving me enough attention. I need your help. That's okay. But no, instead I'm going to upset you. I go against you. I'm going to say something against you. But in reality, it's a way to say I need help, which I wasn't used to in Tibet. For example, I've heard often, because I see people talking not because they have something to say, but just they want to manifest an emotion. And they want the other to understand something, and they have a need to talk. This reminds me very often of Lama Gangchen when he arrived in the West. He used to say he didn't understand English very well. And people came to speak to him, and they were there for hours and hours talking to him, and he nodded his head and listened. And he said, no, he used to say, no problem. But Rinpoche, but listen, this happened and that happened. How's it possible? Okay, yes. Obviously, he had a level of communication which goes way beyond his words. But superficially, he told me, he said, well, I didn't really understand what they were saying. But I said, no problem. And I realized that they just had a need to talk and for somebody to listen to them. And they often came back after a week or so to thank him and saying, yes, Rinpoche, you were right. Everything went well. It worked. Thank you. And all I did was listen to them and say, no problem. Many of us need to be listened to. Many talk because they want because people need to feel themselves embraced, received, and they need to express their emotions. But even if this happens, the important thing is to be very aware of how we use our words. Because words leave a sign and a direction in the mind. And this is just a request to be careful to be careful how you use your speech, both verbal and written. Because once we've said it, it's done. Speech has the power to materialize in intentions. So it's something that we should be really careful with. And this is one of the dangers of jealousy, anger, because when you're taken up with these mental defilements, one loses control of one's speech and ends up saying something that they might regret. I don't know if it's happened to you that I don't know if it's ever happened to you that somebody lost control of their speech with you and said things that normally they wouldn't say. And at some time after, come to say sorry. I'm sorry. They come to apologize and say, I'm sorry, I was just angry. And you say, okay, I know you're angry. Okay, the excuse is fine. But somewhere, there's something that stays. There's a sign there's a mark that remains. I know you were angry, but you still said it. So if you don't think it, don't say it. But I was upset. I was annoyed. Well, so you say you're annoyed, but don't try to upset, to hurt the other. Once I had an argument with someone. It was, fortunately for me, one of the very few experiences of this kind. And we were talking about different points of views about something, and we started to argue. And at a certain point, what he started saying, started to say things to upset me, which had nothing to do with what we were talking about. And I was... I didn't know what to say. And I went to this person after a while. I said, you tried to hurt me. And he said, well, we were arguing, and this is called arguing. But he tried to teach me as if I didn't know. So when you argue, when you discuss something, you try and win blows against the other person. Well, that's pretty bad. That's really ugly. If I'm angry, and I'm upset about something you said, or for whatever reason, for something you said, and I try to upset you and verbalize something towards you, which in a moment of calm I might not even think, just as a way of winning a blow against you, after a while it actually has an effect. Even if you say, I'm sorry, I don't really think that, but somewhere the effect remains. Therefore, it's better to be quiet, and rather than saying something that is of no use. And to be very careful with the use of our speech. I have my own theory. We don't need to do a silent retreat or anything, but before we speak, we should ask ourselves if it's useful or not. Why do we say it? Let's not forget, when we talk, we're communicating something. There's another person who's listening. We should talk. So we should talk with the aim of having the person hear what we want them to hear. We transmit something to the other person. So if you have any doubt, it's better to wait. Leave it out. To speak with awareness of what I'm saying. If I feel that really, if I don't feel it, there's no reason to say it. Anyway, that's not the subject of today, but it's just to say that words have an enormous power, and therefore we need to be very careful how we use them. And in Buddhist tradition, especially the Tibetan ones, and this is something that's reminded very often. There are hours and hours of recitation. All the pujas, recitations. When we started today, for example, and so on, all these things, they are words which serve to direct our mind, to generate certain sentiments, thoughts, motivation, to direct our mind. And this is very important. But we must somehow not only recite, because when we recite something which we haven't understood or we've never desired, the words don't direct our mind with full force. Let me give you an example. Let's say a rice very often, which we recite very often, which serves to remind ourselves of what we want, to direct the direction which we want to go in. In Buddha and Dharma and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment with the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. In other words, I want to help all beings, and for that I need to develop my qualities to the maximum potential, eliminating all mental defilements. And to do this, and I need to go on practice generosity, morality, patience, joyful effort, concentration, and wisdom. And for that I need the help of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. What happens is that, but if I don't know what these perfections, if I take refuge in that, if I haven't developed that desire to get out of samsara, to attain enlightenment, the power of this verse is very limited if I don't have these aspirations. We may recite something and we don't even know really what it is. It's like talking about a place we've never been to. We've just seen a photo. It's difficult to want to go there when we really don't know what it is. Therefore, it's very important to maintain the direction of our mind, to have clarity of where we want to go. And for this, and words have the function of redirecting our mind and putting us back on track. And something I've spoken of so many times is at the base of what we do, and the base, I don't mean at the beginning, I'm saying it from the beginning right to the end. The foundations of a house are important only at the beginning or for the entire duration of the house. Well, the foundation is always important. It's fundamental at the beginning, and it becomes ever more important the more weight you put on the foundations. In the same way, our motivation, what do we want, the direction that we want to give our life, is very important at the beginning. And it continues to be important, ever more important, as we go along our spiritual path. This is something which is, unfortunately, sometimes we remember, and unfortunately, sometimes we don't remember. It can happen that we connect what I want. I connect with what I want. But then sometimes I hear this news or that news, and I get distracted. And then the days passed, the weeks have passed, days have passed, and I haven't had present in my mind what I want in this life. We must listen, to reflect, to get to a clear conclusion, and to have with clarity, what do we want? Okay. And when I ask, what do I want? Rinpoche often helped us. He helped us in so many ways, so often. There was a period in which Lama Gangchen Rinpoche talked infatigably for hours and hours on end. And then out of this came the emblematic phrase, inner peace is the most solid foundation for world peace. And the way we speak, the way we interact, the way we hear, the way we look, the way we interact. And he talked so much about peace. Peace this, peace that. But in effect, it's what I want. It's my own personal objective to have peace. It's not that peace in general is desirable. It's what I want. I have to fall in love with peace. But in order to do that, it means I have passion. I have desire. I have attachment. I'm not going to let go of it by any means. I won't give it up. Yesterday, I had an interesting experience. when was it yesterday? I was quite well. There was a joyful day, and at a certain point, I received a telephone call. I'm not going to get into the details about this call, but at the end, I felt really bad at the end of the call. For many reasons, which I won't go into now. But what I realized was that, in this telephone call, it was just enough that one person said one thing which I didn't like to hear, that in reality, which created an image of what could happen in the future, which I didn't like. I made my film, my own personal film, and that brought me to that moment that ruined my inner joy, my peace. Okay, there were a few little threats and so on, but I reflected, I took a deep breath, and after a while, I started to observe everything's okay. What was said, what I have to do is nothing more than all the person's doing is to share his vision, his way of thinking, which obviously is not the same as mine. And since I have to interact with the other, I need to prepare. I have to prepare myself for the way other people interact and think. Thank you for having manifested this. Therefore, I'm going to try and prepare myself to be prepared to create the necessary conditions to confront any interaction that might happen to me. I'm not going to let my peace be disturbed because you said this and this one did that. And fortunately today I feel a lot better. I was a bit upset about all this. And it's because of this. How much attachment do we have to our inner peace? As Shantideva said in the Bodhisattva Charavatara, what is more important for you? Your inner peace and calm? Or what other people think of you? What's more important? And what is the rhetorical reply? My inner peace. And he said, and then how come you lose it? You blow your top when somebody speaks ill of you. Is it more? So it's more important what the other person says and thinks about you rather than your inner peace. If my inner peace is so important, it means that you can think of me what you want. I'm not going to let go of it. This is my state of bliss, of joy. I don't want to give it up. We must desire this state of peace and to give priority to this. Because if I don't desire something, and when I say peace, I mean a state of harmony with myself and with others. And my inner peace cannot exist cannot be conditioned by the circumstances around me. If my inner peace is conditioned by what the other said or did, and so on, I'm screwed from the outset. But what happens normally? Do we let our inner peace be conditioned about how people behave around us or not? Yes. We get a piece of news. Oh, we feel bad. Somebody says something. I feel bad. And something I find it hard to believe, to understand. Why? When there's news, I, I, I don't mean the news that we don't like, but news that we hear, all types of news. It doesn't take our... If something takes away our inner peace, why do we repeat it? As if it were a mantra, this bad news. Why do we repeat the news that takes away our inner peace? We go and talk about, and we look at it again, and go back to it. We've understood it. A fundamental thing is, I put my energy where I can make a difference, where I can have a result. I don't put my energy where I can have no effect. Even if I like it or don't like it, or there are so many things. Things happen. Oh, things happen. This isn't right. It's not. But if I were to take everything in my range of acquaintances, of things that don't go right and not go, who's taking advantage of this, that, or the other, the list would be absolutely infinite. Well, maybe not, but very, very long. And so many things. And what happens at the end of it? I take a note of all these things and I'm just frustrated. Instead, we should put our energy where our energy can bear fruit, where we can really do something, because life goes by. From when COVID started already, 2 years have gone by. 2 years now. In a while, when it started, when it started, people were asking me, well, when will it end? And I used to say, well, how the hell can I know? And then they asked, will it all go back to how it was? Well, nobody knows. The important thing is for us, it's not when will it finish or what will happen. We're influenced by everything that happens. But the most important thing for me is, in the meantime, is how am I living? Where do I put my energy? In these past 2 years, I'm quite happy where I put my energy. I found myself in a situation where I couldn't travel, and I put energy into something. And I put my energy into something. But it's not. Actually, I have to say, I'm actually very happy to be in the same place, even though there are places I really want to go to, I should go to. And actually, I have to say, it's been very nice not having to get on public transport and to go here and there. And people, I really want to go in Brazil. I miss people so much there, for example. If I'm happy not, but if I say I'm happy not to travel, it doesn't mean to say that I don't want to go and see people in Brazil, in Tibet, or Trichan Rinpoche. But the fact is, these are the conditions in which we find ourselves in. How shall how can I make the most of them? Because days passed very quickly. And then before you know it, it's Christmas, even though the year's just started. And what have I done in that year? What did I fill that year with? Oh, the news here, and this might happen, that might happen, and this and that and the other. Because my cousin, my uncle, what do I know what's going to happen? Do I have to vote? No. So what will be, will be. I don't take use up my mental space with that, because my life is too precious. And it doesn't mean that, I'm not saying that what happens in the country isn't important. I'm just saying that I have little power of it. I take act of what happens, and then I put my energy in the most positive way, in the most useful way. Life goes really quickly every day. And in what direction do I put my energy? And something which is fundamental for me is the awareness that in a very short time we'll die. Even if we live to 100, it still goes past very quickly. And there's nothing wrong with dying. Absolutely nothing wrong with dying. Death in itself is not a taboo. It's not a problem. The fundamental point is not to waste time. The opportunities in this life, opportunities in this life that it just goes by. We have a fantastic opportunity, and we should take the best advantage of it, which means the day I die, which means that when I die, I'll be a better person. I'll die a better person with more patience, love, humility. I generated during my life a positive baggage of positive actions from the interactions I've had, things I've done during my life. I bring that baggage with me. And the situations start and finish, but we continue. For example, holidays. When we go on holiday, what is the most important aspect of a holiday? Where do we go? What should we do? How much fun we have? How we live during the holiday? Or in which way the holiday transforms us? I like going to beautiful places. I like to be with people I like being with, to do fun things, pleasurable things. Everything, that's great. Oh, eat really well. Everything you want. Everything, all these. But the question that comes to me, somebody who starts a holiday, and at the end of the holiday, what did they construct? What characteristics did they develop? Am I better at the end of the holiday than I was at the beginning? Because there's a difference between consumption, consuming, and becoming something. I don't know if that's clear. Because one thing, I live the present moment, consuming pleasures of the senses, to have the most pleasurable life. Another thing is the interaction, the way I live. How will that transform me? Because however much pleasure I have in a certain moment, but if I finish that pleasure moment with much more jealousy and attachment, that hasn't been that good for me. On the other hand, if I finish that pleasure moment and I have more stability, more satisfaction, that's good. It was good for me. It's very important in life in general to try to see things that we do, where we put our energy, not only with regards to what I'm actually doing in that moment, if I'm productive or if it's pleasurable or not, but is what I'm doing in the way I interact with others and with myself, in what way is it going to transform me? There's a metaphor. We eat something. What's more important? if that, how wonderful that food is, or how it satisfies my senses, or how well that food nourishes my body and maintains my good health. With a bit of awareness, what do we? With a bit of good sense, yes, it's better. How it's true that it's more important how well the food nourishes my body. But I usually go for what I like best. It would be wonderful if there was a restaurant, for example. When somebody arrives, it's not made of dishes that we choose. There's a questionnaire, as there are in Ayurvedic and Tibetan Chinese medicine, other traditions. How do you feel today? There are questions which help to determine the psychophysical state of that person. And according to that state, there's foods which are good for us and those which aren't. Okay, these are 3 dishes you can have. Choose between. And then we can order not necessarily the food that we like the taste of, but the food which is better for us. For example, if we're going to eat something, this food will diminish anxiety and the wind humor. This will bring you more sleepiness, or this one greater mental clarity. So it depends on the mental, physical state of each person. I don't know how often each of you have eaten with the awareness that the food is a medicine in all effects. Not very often, I imagine, but it is. This is a metaphor to helps us to understand when I eat. It's not so much. What's important is not so much if I like the food, but that's not the fundamental one. And it's better if I like it, but better, more important, what is the effect that food will have on my body and on my mind? Is that clear? Similarly, whatever situation, when we consume information, images, experiences, as we consume food, it's not a question if that information is pleasurable or not, but rather how will it transform us? Will it increase our mental, physical state of health, or will it reinforce unhealthy aspects of our way of thinking and behaving? Let's remember that there's nothing that we do or think which doesn't affect the way I am. It doesn't affect our health and the way I am. There's not one piece of food that will not affect my health. Maybe I'm wrong, but it seems a bit obvious. But everything we put in our body, everything I see, similarly, everything I hear, everything I listen to, everything I experience has an effect on my mind and body, on my mind. What does the mind feed off? It feeds off objects of perception, which are made of sounds, images, tastes, touch, smells, and principally mental images, thoughts towards the past, the future, etc. Our mind feeds off this, and we should try and feed the mind with that which nourishes it and makes it healthier. But there's something very important, that which we spoke of before. What do I desire? What do I really want? Because how I direct my state of health or my mental health, if I don't have a clear image of what a happy mental state is, a healthy mental status, it's a very simple question. which doesn't have a very easy answer. You tell me what a healthy mind is. Not any simple question, but not easy to answer. All our, for example, our whole discipline of psychology and psychiatry to bring a person. What's it based on? Eliminating pathologies, or bringing the person to a healthy, happy state of mind? No, to eliminate pathologies. Once I went to a congress. There were 400 people. They were most of the people present were psychiatrists. There was the president of the association of all the psychiatrists in Holland, and he told a story which left me very confused. What he said was, and it was really interesting for me, because I saw the difference between, for example, there's a context. It was interesting to see how doctors spoke between themselves. I think, probably the only non-doctor present. That was curious to see how differently they spoke. Anyway, beyond this, what happens? What he said that really struck me, he told that years ago, in the 50s or 30s, I have a real problem remembering dates. Well, quite a long time ago in the States, researchers sent to psychiatric hospitals false patients, their students, for example, and they took them to different psychiatric hospitals and to pretend that they had certain symptoms, for example, schizophrenia. I see this and I see that. And what happened? And everyone he sent, they were taken to the hospital. They received and they were treated, and after a few days they said, I feel fine. But what happened was the staff said, no, what are you talking about? You mad? You haven't been cured. And they were told they needed to undergo treatment, which at that time was very heavy and invasive. What happened at the end of the year? And what he said to all these hospitals, be careful. You need to be really careful. I sent you 20 patients, and you all took them in as real unwell patients. You need to be. You really need to be careful. How can you discern between somebody who's mentally well or not? What happened was that year, there was an enormous number. There was an enormous number of patients who were refused entry. No, ma, you're not mad. You're not. And they were rejected at the end of the year. And he said, so he said, well, in that year, he revealed that and the president of the psychiatrists in Holland said, we find ourselves in a similar position. We still have difficulty in discerning between somebody who's really sick mentally and somebody who's healthy. Nothing to take away from the discipline of psychiatry. Especially in a society in which there is so many conflicts and mental issues arise. This is something else. But what I wanted to say is that we focus on sickness. If we were to focus on achieving a healthy state of mind, we'd have to ask ourselves, what is that? It's not so easy to reply. And something I've tried to do very, very often is to describe a healthy mind. For example, for me, a healthy mind is a mind which maintains its balance and peace, regardless of where it finds itself. But it doesn't pretend that reality doesn't exist, but rather acts consistently with reality that surrounds him, and is not ill at ease and suffers which is aware of the interdependence of phenomena, and that the reality that we perceive is relative, and the healthy mind that is aware that which he sees is his perception, not necessarily the truth, because others see through their perception. A healthy mind is not constantly in conflict with others, but rather in a state of harmony. A healthy mind is not obsessed with the I and the mind, and is aware that and in the interdependence of all things, see that the healthy of the others, the happiness of others is just as important as my own. And with this, I don't mean to say everybody's unwell, but what is the mind that I want to achieve? A healthy mind is a state at the mind, and if a healthy mind is a mind that focuses on something which is not doesn't distracted by random objects that arrive, has a stability and focuses on what it wants to focus on. A healthy mind has at its base satisfaction and joy. Therefore, what I ask myself is, do I want it or not? That's the important thing for us. The important thing for us is to be able to desire a healthy lifestyle, mind and body. And when I say, what is that state of health that I want with my mind and for my body, for my well-being? And this is very clear for me, and I direct myself towards something that becomes, I develop a very strong attachment and I won't let go. And one of the things in Buddhism, which is repeated very often, but sometimes we lose ourselves in symbology. I try to explain what happens is that to understand what is, let's call it like this, the healthy mind. Let me give you an example. We have the 5 Dhyani Buddhas. 5 Dhyani Buddhas are representations of our own qualities developed to the full potential. But one of the fundamental characteristics of each one, which is Dribulamprga in Tibetan, is to bring the result into the path. Therefore, a Buddha, in the case of, let's say, the 5 Dhyani Buddhas, Amoghasiddhi, etc., they're not gods, divinities to whom we ask help, but are rather what I want to develop, my own potential, to bring the result into the path. They represents our result, that which we can develop and realize. Because the most important thing at the beginning is to dream, is to desire. something that which is really not at all easy. All these representations, all these images are here. All these images serve to help us reinforce that image, the direction where we want to go in. Let's start with a Moghasiddhi, for example. I'm going like this with my hand because the Moghasiddhi is there in the temple, and he represents, amongst many other things, what's called the aggregate of compositional factors. According to the description of Buddhists, each one of us is composed of a mind and body, of which the body is called the aggregate of form, and the body is divided into four: sensations, discernment, consciousness, which is the flow of thoughts, and then compositional factors. Therefore, this Moghasiddhi, each one of the Dhyani Buddhists represents one of these factors in a balanced way. And also the five wisdoms, which I want to look at now. In the five wisdoms, we have Vajrayana, clear as a mirror, of discernment, of Amitabha, of Dharmatattva, of Akshobhya, equanimity of Ratnasambhava, and the all-realizing wisdom of a Moghasiddhi. Let's start with a Moghasiddhi. To understand these five wisdoms, for me, which helps, is to see where do I want to go with these wisdoms. We need to see the basis, the basis of these five wisdoms. Where are we now? Let's say the all-accomplishing wisdom is our capacity today, as the base, which is where we are now. It's our capacity to say, I want this, I don't want this. Or rather, this aspect of our mind which directs us towards something. In every moment we find ourselves, in every moment there's a part of us says, I want this, and I'm going to do this, I'm not going to do that. I don't know well what to do, so I'm not going to do something. And also being still and not doing anything is a choice, is an action. Therefore we have constantly this mind, the mind of action, of choices. This characteristic of the mind is called the all-accomplishing wisdom, the base. The problem is, in our case, we have the problem of the not a lot accomplishing mind. Or will it be right, or shall I do this, or shall I do that? Insecurity, uncertainty, doubts, and so on. So we don't accomplish that much. And we have an absence of awareness of the implications of our actions and the results. And therefore, we're often insecure because we're not sure of the results. What is the development of what accomplishing wisdom? Is to have more certainty, no uncertainty, these doubts, but to have an awareness of one's own actions and the results that they will bring. And one knows what one's doing, acting without doubt, without uncertainty. That's all accomplishing wisdom. The capacity to act in every moment without doubts, with a total awareness that this situation go in that direction, I'll get this result. This is a huge security. Just imagine if we had no more doubts. Leave aside all the other mind problems that we have. But let's just say We had no more uncertainties in our actions, what to say, what to do, what to say. In our, if we had certainty in every of our actions, daily actions, it would be great, wouldn't it? It doesn't mean solving all problems, but we don't have doubts in our actions. This is an example of what we want to be. It's the wisdom of Amoghasiddhi, Buddha Amoghasiddhi. Then we go to Ratnasambhava of equanimity. It's something goes further. Wisdom of equanimity of the base, which is where we are now, is the characteristic of our mind in which we manage to see similarities between things. For example, I see. For example, I look at you and I can say without any doubt you're all human beings or sentient beings. So I see the thing that you have in common. You're different in many aspects, but you're similar on many other things. Therefore, our capacity to put together these things and to create groups is the wisdom of equanimity. I can see that there are many little tables here. They're similar, but they're different. But they're all little tables, so I can put them together. The capacity to see the similarities between various phenomena, perception, and put them together is called the wisdom of equanimity. We have this capacity. Let's try just think what it would be like if we weren't able to put things together. It would be chaotic. But we have our own limits. When we see two people, apart seeing those human beings, do we see that everybody suffers and wants to be happy, or do we react with attraction and aversion to this one and that one? There's a lack of equanimity. When we see many things, do we manage to see, however different they may seem, do we manage to see that they all lack inherent existence and they're interdependent? Do we manage to see that? Therefore, wisdom is the wisdom of equanimity is to unite things, to see that which is they have in common. And the more we have this capacity, fewer conflicts we have. When we put things together and see the similarities, we have fewer conflicts. Okay, we'll do Akshobhya. At the end, let's look at Amitabha, discernment. The wisdom of discernment is almost the opposite of the wisdom of equanimity, which is we see the similarities that unites things and we put them together. And the ability to see the similarities between all things. On the other hand, the wisdom of discernment is where we see the characteristics particular of each thing. You're all human beings, but you're different. Some are men, some are women, some have different haircuts, different ways. The way I'm talking about obviously external appearance, but I can go into thousands of details. More I see the specificity. So I can't say it. The peculiarities of each thing. The wisdom of the Buddha manages to see the peculiarities of each thing, the particularities of each thing. I see everything of the same group, but at the same time, I see I see each one as an individual. This reminds me, for example, in some examples I have, of people who had parents who had a different education. For example, I know people who had parents who had a different idea of equanimity. They treated all their kids in the same way. But what happens when all children are treated in exactly the same way? But the peculiarities of each child is ignored. At the end, it's not equanimous because each one is different. The fact that exactly the same is given to each one, is not necessarily. It doesn't mean that each one is seen and gets what they need. It reminds me of a friend in Brazil who told me he came from a huge family in Brazil, many brothers and sisters. There were 8 or something like that. And the father, who worked really hard, he had quite a good position in a company. He did something. He had an equanimous attitude. They were always together, but he had one moment during the week, and he had half a day, specific time, which he dedicated to one of his children every week, each day of the week, a couple of hours for one of the children, where he did what that particular child wanted, and he had, in a more personal, direct way, where the particularity of the person was respected. So even though he didn't have much time, but the fact that he gave me an hour or 2 hours or whatever it was, and saw me for what I was, helped to create a very strong bond with my father. What I want to say is that, even in this context, to be able to see each one as they are, to see the needs of each one, to see the other, to see the particularities of that person. This is the union of the wisdom of equanimity with discernment. Discernment, fully evolved. You manage to see each one and the peculiarities of each one. And then we have the wisdom of, as clear as a mirror, of Vajrayana, which refers to our capacity to perceive many things at the same time, like a mirror. A mirror reflects many things at the same time. Similarly, at the same time, I can see many people, the sounds, objects. To our mind, many objects of perception arise. Sometimes I heard in a documentary that said that every second the brain receives about 2 billion 2 million images of perception, pieces of information, many things that the brain receives every second. And all this information, about 2 million a second. And this documentary said that we are, and generally we're aware of only 2,000. So from 2 billion items of information, we perceive only 2,000. So if we were to take away 2,000 from 2 billion, you realize that you're not perceiving 1,900,000,000, etc. items of information. So when we have this wisdom, we're aware of all the pieces of information that arrive to our brain. Let's see. Well, for example, your heart. We're alive. Our heart. In fact, our mind receives information about the internal feeling of the heart beating in our body. But if we were to be quiet and we listen to the beating of our heart, is it possible? Yes, it is. That, for example, at this very moment, that information is available to our mind, but we don't perceive it. There is an infinite number of things, a piece of information, but we're not aware of them. Therefore, to develop wisdom as clear as a mirror, is to be aware of everything that appears to us and to see them all together. It's said that the omniscient mind, for example, it's said, of which there are 5 types, one of them is the capacity to be aware of all the information that arrives. If the example of before, as if a Buddha were able to be aware of 2 billion items of information instead of 2,000 per second. Let's try to imagine what it would be like if we had no doubts on our actions, about our actions. If we were to see the similarities of everything at every moment, without losing the peculiarities, the particularities of each thing. And at the same time, to be aware, we are everything that happens to us. What would it be like? Yet alone 360 degrees, a lot more. With the wisdom of Dharmadhatu, of Buddhakshobhya, is to perceive this without selfishness, anger, without fear, without jealousy, envy, anxiety. In other words, in a state absolutely free of, without any of the things which takes away our balance, without ignorance, which perceives reality in an inconsistent way. For example, we see that which is impermanent as permanent. That's a form of ignorance. Another form of ignorance is to see that which is subjective, we see it as objective. This is another form of ignorance. The impermanent things appear to us as permanent or not. When we see somebody, when we see them the next day, do we see the same person or not? The same. Therefore, we're ignorant. As we relate to that which is impermanent as permanent. We relate to that which is subjective as if it were objective. These are 2 examples of ignorance. The wisdom of Dharmadhatu is a mind which is free of any form of ignorance. No notion of conflict, dissatisfaction, aversion, attachment. But on the other side, it has harmony, satisfaction. And harmony is the result of wisdom. When I see that which is impermanent as impermanent, that which is subjective as subjective, that brings me to see reality with harmony in a consistent manner. I don't battle against what I see, the reality. I don't live with the notion that of how things should be. This expectation that things should be in a certain way is the result of seeing that which is subjective as objective. When I live with harmony with reality, it doesn't mean I don't interact, but I don't get into conflict with it. But I realize that everything exists as a result of an infinite number of causes, of conditions and results. Therefore, I act in a way so that things may change in a positive way, but I don't have that expectation they be as I believe they should be. For example, I would like to have different sentiments, to react in a different way. When Buddha sees something, Buddha doesn't say when he sees a suffering person, I accept you as you are. He sees a suffering person. He has a strong desire that the person not desire, but he doesn't have the presumption to say this person should be like this, rather, that acts rather in a way that creates a positive interaction with that person to change in a positive way. Is that clear? It doesn't mean to be in harmony doesn't mean to agree with everything, to accept things as they are, but rather I don't have the presumption of how things must be, but I accept things as they are, but I direct myself to what I would like things to be. I don't know if that's clear. This is a very important point. And very often, those people have this view, inside Buddhism, and people who have this view of interdependence, it's seen as a kind of not so good passive movement of peace. It means like doing nothing. That's what it's considered. There is a little bit of, it seemed like a non-action, detachment, as if it's a kind of giving up. It's been said to me, well, you're all right. Everything that happens, you just accept it. As if it's it's an act of being totally passive. But being in harmony does not mean being passive towards. It's not being passive towards things that happen around it. He's in peace, but acts in a way which to create a positive interdependence so that things improve. The fact that I'm in harmony with you, that I accept, and I accept you as you are, doesn't mean that I'm passive. I passively accept what you are. I passively approve of what you say or do. But it means that I don't have the presumption, the expectation that you are different from how you are. But I have the desire that you are different in the future. I interact with you so that I may help your mind to change, but not with the presumption that you change in the way I say, or and neither the presumption that you must be how I think you should be. But each interaction has an enormous power of interaction. I interact with you, so I'm hoping that it brings you to a pacific state of mind, but without the presumption of saying this is of you having to be how I think you ought to be. There are aspects of our society. Are there aspects which I don't like? Sure. But I can assure you, if I should leave, if I let my critical capacity let it go, if I allowed myself to say this should be like that, that should be like that. I can assure you. I've just tried once. I'm pretty good at finding fault. I can be really critical. But what I saw, criticizing, this is not right, this is not right, this is not good. The main point is, what can I do so that something be better? Not, but how do I want it to be in a short, medium, and long term? And how can I interact so it goes in the direction that I would like it to? The first thing is, as Mahatma Gandhi said, I need to be the change that I want. I need to be the change that I want to see in the world. I need to live with consistency, to be consistent in a way which is consistent with that which I would like to see in society, which doesn't mean, it doesn't mean like taking a position. I do this. Means I must act with the characteristics that I would like to see in others. With respect, everything I would like to see. Because the first thing that I'd like to do with this is, the first thing I would like to be in this society is to be a good influence. I have no control of what will happen with other people's. But I want to be a positive interdependence in my interactions. That's already a great deal. Therefore, it doesn't mean being passive, but rather to be aware of the power of my actions and to direct them towards that which I believe will be of greatest benefit. That's okay. Is that clear? Therefore, in general, when we say, who do I want to be? We do self-healing. I want to be Akshobhya. I want to be Ratnasambhava, Anivitaba, Vairocana, Amoghasiddhi. I want to be Buddha Vajradhara. Who is Buddha Vajradhara? It's the state which represents the union of the 5 Dhyani Buddhas, which means a being which has all these characteristics and say, and not the detentore, the holder of the Vajra, this object, to hold. This Vajra literally means diamond, which means indestructible, indivisible, which is the union, the indivisible union of love and wisdom. He or her, Vajradhara, is he or her who manages to hold this indivisibility of love and wisdom, this inner state which is totally which is of the state, an indivisible state of indiscriminate love and wisdom of things, awareness of things as they are. No. It doesn't mean to have to be fixed here with a dorje and a bell, as we see in pictures. Oh, you know, but Buddha, Vajradhara is represented with a dorje in his right hand, and love and method and joy, and in the left hand is the bell, which represents wisdom, correct wisdom, correct view of reality, which brings harmony, and then there's the embrace. It's the union between method and wisdom in an indivisible way. And there are other meanings as well. But the point is, but for the moment that's fine. That's enough. It's not that, it doesn't mean that when you become Vajradhara, you become like he is in the paintings. It means rather to have love wisdom, and live in a way that these two qualities, in whatever I do, are indivisible, inseparable from the deep state of love and compassion, at which at the same time perceives the interdependence and has a correct view of reality, see reality as it really is. What happens? Let's use words to remind us. Let's look at the archetypes, images, to remind us what I would like to be. Who would I like to be? What do I desire really? And one of the practices in Buddhism, for example, in self-healing, which is one of the most amazing practices, is the Vajrayana Tantra, so-called Tantra in Buddhism. They seem very mysterious, inexplicable. But often people say to me, I like philosophy better. You know, all these things that I don't understand. You think, you're right, it's difficult to understand. It's not for nothing that formally in monasteries, a monk does 25 years of philosophy before starting Tantra. But Tantra has a particular quality, not because you don't understand, brings no benefits. When you study philosophy, the studies of Vajrayana Tantra are the most logical. There's a consistency and a logic, fantastic, which is based on the philosophy. Let me explain in a few words. We spoke of, if I remember well, last week, in other moments, it's not enough. We said often that it's not enough to understand, but once we understand, we need to familiarize ourselves until it becomes natural. What happens is that if I were to say to you, meditate on love and equanimity, it's not easy to induce oneself to a state of love and to identify oneself with this state of love and then remain in that state of love. But let's imagine for a minute the familiarization of love is not intellectual, but I have to feel internally that sensation. For a minute, imagine an archetype, let's say Buddha, like could be our own guru, Buddha Shakyamuni, Avalokiteshvara, Buddha of compassion, which represents for us, love and wisdom and equanimity, and is to all effects. And we allow ourselves to connect to the being and to see it as a personification, representation of those qualities. And at a certain point, and once we've connected, we let our own identity go for a second, and we allow ourselves to, let's say, in inverted commas, to pretend to be that being, that Buddha. We bring the result into the path. I am Avalokiteshvara. I am Guru Buddha. I am Buddha Shakyamuni. I don't see myself as, but I am. And I allow myself for a minute to identify myself as an exercise, to identify myself as if, and if I'm a Buddha, how do I feel? I feel love. And this allows myself to induce myself to that state of love, of compassion. Through what? Through identity and identity. Let's say any Buddha, Chenrezig, Guru Buddha. With our own guru, it's much simpler. For me, it's much easier to connect myself with a state of stability, wisdom, and love, etc., with Lama Gangchen rather than any other Buddha. That's just for me. It's much deeper, much more direct. But if I imagine myself as I am, that being, with all his or her characteristics, I have those characteristics. I have a chance to experience this. Somebody might say, well, it's not true. Well, it doesn't have to be true. But we just have to imagine, to let the imagination free, and to imagine what it would be like to feel those things. When we allow ourselves to imagine, we identify ourselves with Buddha. Knowing what a Buddha is, the satisfaction, wisdom, balance, etc., we automatically reach a state of peace, a healthy body, a joy, and we identify with it, and we stay there for a while. This has an enormous effect, because the more I bring the path into the result into the path, and to generate this identity as that person, the more I behave as if I were that Buddha, the sooner I will become that Buddha. I don't know if that's clear. In the practice, I find myself in front of a situation. If I were Lama Gangchen, my guru, if I were him, well, okay, really, I don't know because I'm not him. But in my imagination, how can I imagine to be a wisdom being, to be in harmony of love, compassion, etc.? I have to do that. I pretend as if it were like that. And the better I generate this identity, and the more I behave as if I were a Buddha, the more quickly I can identify myself with those qualities. This is called, in a few words, it's called Tagya in Tibetan, self-generation. When I do the practice of Tara, I do self-generation with Tara. It's not that I see myself as Tara. I don't see myself as Tara. It's not like Lama Michel is suddenly with a feminine body, with long hair, green body, with all the characteristics, jewels and the lips and everything. Well, that would be a bit like carnival if that were the case. It's not that I see myself as Tara. I am Tara. And that's what I imagine. Lama Michel dies, and Tara is born. That's it. And this what is said in Vajrayana that the women should generate themselves as masculine Buddha, and vice versa, because what happens in our very subtle level has no sex. So the state of being a Buddha is neither masculine nor feminine. We could have a Buddha with, seeing the times we're in, it seems to be a need now. The state of being a Buddha is not masculine or feminine. It's an inner state. It goes beyond the body. the fact that I generate myself and live as if I were, but being effectively. And then I familiarize myself with these qualities, and I need to maintain this during the meditation and outside the meditation. And it's done also through the practice of Guru Yoga. We see Buddha who goes down, Guru Buddha goes down into our heart, who becomes inseparable. We become inseparable, let's say, from Guru Buddha. We experience an enormous state of peace and joy and harmony. And then after, and every day, we act as a consequence of that identity. And what happens is that gradually we familiarize ourselves with these qualities because our mind is much more influenced by experience rather than knowledge. You know, when I understand morality, generosity, and all those other perfections, but to identify myself, to familiarize myself, there are many methods. One is there are many sadhanas, visualization, self-generation. They're all very different, not because we need so many, because some people have a predisposition towards one type and others to another type. So the different sadhanas, the different practices touch a different, in Vajrayana, touch a different aspect. And self-healing is the basis. It's the basis of all. It's like this. It's the foundation. The skeleton of this whole system. And then there's the use of the word. The verses we recite serve to condition the mind, to familiarize ourselves, to give ourselves direction and a way, and to remind ourselves, what do we want, of what we want. I want to be a Buddha. I want to be with peace for myself and others. And this is my priority. Because what I really want to do, my priority is to help others, but first I need to be well with myself. But let's remind ourselves of our objective. And when we find ourselves in a situation that we don't like, for whatever reason it might be, let's remind ourselves we shouldn't put ourselves in opposition, with presumption or expectation of how things should be. And we'll get upset because they're not as we think they should be. And because people don't behave as they should do. And this one, how can this one dare to behave like that? We must understand. We must remember that we live in an interdependent reality. And it's very complicated interdependence. But we need to react and to act in a way that will create harmony, in a harmonious way that will, but not in a passive way, but with a lot of passion, a lot of activity. Let me repeat it again. Without the presumption of expecting things, demanding things be as we think they should be. Oh, it would be better if they were like this, but they're not. The question is, the question is, how should things be? How can I act so I can be a positive interdependence to improve things? What can I offer to the world with my actions, with my daily life? And the conclusion is, and what I've seen in these few years of life of mine, is the best that a human being can give to society is to be a person who's at peace with himself, in harmony with himself and others. Because when I see, and the biggest example of that is Lama Gangchen Rinpoche, and others like him who have this They have permanent state of equanimity, of patience, of love and joy, harmony, etc. They have a capacity to transform and to influence positively, a great influence people around them. The resources that Rinpoche had to touch the lives of so many people, and this is a very special capacity, to meet somebody and to touch the body and mind, to touch in such a way there's a clear difference. There's so many people who changed before and after Lama Gangchen. He touched their hearts. But what enabled him to do that, and others like him to do this and help so many people? Material wealth? No. He came in Europe. He had absolutely nothing, materially speaking. He had a few ritual objects. For example, he always traveled with a book of Lama and Lama Tsongkhapa, and he had the clothes that he was wearing. He managed to do so much because he had a great knowledge, because he had so many academic qualifications. No, because he was quite simple. And he used to say, "I'm number one cuckoo. I can't even speak or write your language." For example, if I have to take a train, I find it difficult to see what time it leaves or what time it arrives. So, for example, once Rinpoche took the train to come to Albaniano on his own because he wasn't very good at doing that. But the point is, what enabled him to help so many people was his being, his actual being. Not so much what he said. Because if we would take his words and give them to another, the effect would be totally different. What he had, and the most important thing a being can have, is an inner state of peace, joy, harmony, and love. And that manifests towards others. But if we want to do well in this world, is to be love, peace, joy, satisfaction. We need to be what we want to see in the world. And this is one of the best ways we can influence the world. And we react and speak, but in the best way possible. But let's all try to use our time, our resources, our word, written and verbal, to interact in a virtuous way, to walk towards that which we want to be. And let's remind ourselves to be in harmony. Doesn't mean that we like it and everything's okay. It means, in this specific context, means not to have presumption and expectations of how everything and everyone should be. To put energy where I can react in a positive way. So many things happen, but at the end, what have I actually done? As I said earlier, and soon we'll die, and that's not a problem. The important thing is how I die. Who am I at the moment of death? Not so much what I did during life, but who I become. Okay. Okay. This is what I wanted to share with you today. And let me repeat, to be aware of our word, to be aware of the direction that we want to move in, and not to lose sight of that. And Rinpoche often used to say, need enjoy. We have so many wonderful things. Oh, there's this and that problem, sure. Yeah, but there's so many positive things. But even if there are lots of problems, why can't I be joyful? I mustn't be indifferent towards suffering, to conflict. I need to act to improve. But if my inner state is joyful, I can help. Okay.
Jetsun alame kutse rapten chi namkara trinle chokchur gepada losan tempe drume sasumgi drowe munsel taktu ne gyur chi kewa kuntu yanda lamada dralme cheki pela lonche chin sadan lamgi yönte rabzone dorje change kopa nyur tobo shua nimo dele tsendele nime kunyan delek shin ninsen takto delek pe kuncho sumki chingelo kuncho sumki ngodrub kuncho sumki trashishu.
At dawn or dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness.
Grazie a tutti.
Thank you, everybody. I just want to give you some really good news. I'm very happy about that. The 15th of February, let's say in a month's time, Sherab Rinpoche Lama will come here. He is of my generation. He's more or less my age. He's one of the most important lamas in India now. Somebody who has a lot of experience, knowledge, a very serious practitioner. And he's coming to Europe, and he's coming to us from the 15th to 26th, and he'll give teachings. So we'll have a program. We'll take advantage of his presence. And for so many years, Lama Gangchen brought so many masters. I'm very happy if you receive teachings from others. There are people who know a lot more than I do. Therefore, I will make the simultaneous translation from him. And if I remember correctly, the 17th of February, this is a preview, who will give teachings on Lamrim and Tara initiation. Okay, and the 3-day commentary on the practice of Tara Chittamani, which is, and then there'll be a day of Chud, blessing of another day for the blessing of the temple, and so on. I'll have other things to do, but that's mainly. I'm going to tell you immediately. So you can organize yourselves for those dates. 17th, 17th, 18th, until the 21st for the practices. So I invite you all to come here to take advantage of this. Thank you all very much. Thank you.